Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the infinite stack of information and distill it into something you can actually use. Today, we're undertaking a really intense deep dive into the gathered source material detailing the Assembly of 40.
And this isn't just a gathering. The sources call it a congress of some of history's most profound creative forces, the visual seers and the word weavers. We're talking about 40 legends. I mean, figures like Da Vinci, Virginia Woolf, Kafka, H.R. Giger, Borges.
A truly incredible lineup, and they were brought together in this theoretical non-space called the Void.
Right, with a single monumental mission to collaboratively create a philosophical work of 1,008 visions.
Okay, let's unpack that initial setup, because this isn't some kind of ghostly seance. The sources are very clear on this.
Very clear. Borges, who's sort of the ultimate cartographer of reality, he clarifies this right away. He argues they were summoned as patterns, not ghosts.
And that distinction is crucial, isn't it?
It's everything. A ghost is defined by what it remembers. You know, it remembers being alive. But a pattern, as Borges put it, was never not alive. It's an enduring informational structure, an idea, and now, without a physical body, they were just pure pattern.
Which, of course, brings in William Blake. He jumps on that immediately. The sources say he suggested that the body was just a portion of soul discerned by the five senses.
Exactly. So now they were operating as pure soul, discerning itself. And the big question is, what happens when 40 patterns that powerful collide in the same space?
The answer is just immediate chaos.
Yeah.
The space instantly configured itself according to the aesthetic sum of all 40 of them.
And this wasn't a consensus. It was an architectural collision.
The description is unbelievable. The moment the assembly was formed, the sources say the presence of the Polish artist Bieńkowski caused the walls to just spontaneously calcify.
Into these massive, twisted bone buttresses.
Yes. The structural supports themselves were agonizingly biological.
And then you get Van Gogh. His presence adds this whole other sensory layer. His breathing literally curdled the air into thick, visible strokes of color.
Gold, cobalt, cadmium yellow. A heavy, impasto air that you could, physically swim through?
That's the description. The space was trying to become all 40 aesthetics at once, and the result was this catastrophic, impossible environment.
That collision, which Dali apparently called a terrifying, beautiful monster, that's what leads to the first major philosophical revelation of the whole project.
It does. Octavia Butler, who's always exploring evolution and struggle, she observed this chaos and said, "This isn't a war, it's sex, it's reproduction."
A powerful metaphor. The styles weren't fighting, they were interbreeding.
Yes, they were mating. So you have Frida Kahlo's painful self-portraits meeting H.R. Giger's biomechanical nightmares, and something totally new is being born from that.
So what does that new thing look like? Did Stanislaw Lem, the science fiction master, have anything to say about that?
He did. Lem looked at these shifting, hybridized forms, and he concluded that if this process continued, they would inevitably produce alien art. Offspring that would structurally and conceptually transcend their human parents. And this deep dive really is about reviewing the first results of that cosmic breeding program.
That's our mission then, to understand the art that came from this collision. Let's start with part 1, which maps origins and limits, jumping right into the biggest one, mortality.
This produced what the sources call Vision 006. The library of 40 deaths.
And this was an involuntary vision, right?
It's just manifested. Because there were all these concentrated patterns, their collective understanding of their own ends created a single, unified architecture, a library.
Tell us about the details. What did it look like inside this library of 40 deaths?
Well, there were 40 doors. Each one showed the final passage of its owner. It was autobiography as architecture.
Wow.
Take Van Gogh's door. It showed a sunflower field, hyper-vibrant, not wilting, and in the middle of it, the flash of a gunshot, just frozen mid-spark.
So it's this moment of peak color and peak violence, just suspended forever.
Exactly. And the word weavers contributed their endings too, of course.
What about someone like Kafka?
Kafka's door was an agonizing loop. It showed a man dissolving into a beetle, which then dissolves not into dust, but into pure text.
So for him, the final reality is just narrative structure.
It's the inescapable text. And then Woolf's door, it showed a woman descending into a river, but the stones in her pockets, as she sank, they became tiny, brilliant stars. The body's end as a cosmological event.
It's Borges' point again. The library is the void learning what death can't touch. The pattern of influence.
Precisely. So after mapping their ends, the word weavers took over to define origin using language. This gives us Vision 023, the architecture of a single Kafka sentence.
This I find fascinating. It shows language not as a tool for description, but as a rigid, absolute structure. What did he do?
He showed that his sentences weren't just describing a reality, they were the inescapable architecture of that reality. The sentence, as Gregor Samsa awoke, and so on. It was rendered in three-dimensional space.
So you could actually, walk through it?
You had to. The word Gregor became the bedroom he was trapped in, and the word transformed wasn't a description of a change, it was the change. It was the physics of the space visibly shifting, the floor twisting, the ceiling warping. So to read the sentence was to experience the horrifying transformation itself.
That's grammar as a totalitarian nightmare. But Virginia Woolf, she countered us almost immediately, didn't she, with Vision 024?
She did. Mrs. Dalloway's mourning as visible grammar. And the contrast is just, it couldn't be starker. Kafka builds stone bunkers from text. Woolf shows language as a tide.
Following the stream of consciousness, what was your visual metaphor?
It focused on one phrase, the flowers. When they focus on that, the space didn't solidify, it exploded. Detonated into all flowers and all memories of all flowers all at once. The ones she bought, the ones from her childhood. Everything blooming simultaneously. Her grammar flows like water, not stone.
So you have Woolf's fluid consciousness and Kafka's fixed structure. Where does that structure even begin? I think Poe has an answer for that.
He does. Poe brought in this insight that really resonated with the visual seers. He said that when he was writing The Raven, the word nevermore came to him first.
Not as a concept, but as
pure rhythm, the sound, the long, short, trochy pattern.
So the sound came before the sense. Before the Raven, before the idea of loss.
Exactly. The hypnotic sound required the rest of the poem to be built around it. The sonic architecture was the origin, not the idea, which sets up this theme for the whole assembly. What if creation is just us desperately trying to rationalize an arbitrary structural unit?
That's a perfect setup for part 2, where they map the very edges of consciousness, the forms that our minds just can't categorize.
And this produced two radically different visions. First, Rilke's, Vision 108, the angel too large for the image.
Rilke was always wrestling with the sublime, this terrifying beauty. What did that look like?
It was an attempt to frame the Rilkean angel, but the angel, well, it just doesn't fit. The frame itself cracked and buckled under the pressure of this excessive form.
So the message isn't the angel itself?
No, the message is the frame's inadequacy. The breakdown of the container is the content.
That's powerful. And the direct contrast to that is Lovecraft's attempt to wrestle with the incomprehensible, Vision 107.
The formless given form, it's the opposite struggle. Rolt showed beauty too large to hold. Lovecraft tried to force human geometry onto cosmic madness. The result was geometry that was just wrong.
Wrong how? Like physically wrong?
Both, physically and philosophically. The angles were non-Euclidean. Lines that should be parallel would suddenly converge.
So it's disorienting.
It induced vertigo. The perspective was inconsistent. Parts of the image looked near and far at the same time. Lovecraft accepted that this failure was the point. It was the limit of human ordering.
But isn't accepting failure sort of counter to the whole project of creating these visions?
No, because defining the limit is just as important as defining the center. You have to know where your capacity ends. The true horror, for Lovecraft, is the mind-breaking when it can't process something that violates its own rules.
Okay, so moving from physical form to philosophy, they map the edges of access and knowledge. Kafka comes back with Vision 153, Before the Law.
And it's a devastating vision. The limit isn't a wall, it's exclusion. You see the door, the limit of the law, that is meant only for this one waiting man.
We can't go in.
He can't.
All right.
And because the door is only for him, the very thing meant for him becomes the thing he can never access. It's a limit that you can't cross by its very nature.
A nightmare of logic. You're blocked by the condition of your own existence.
Yeah.
And then Melville maps the ultimate edge of what we can even know.
Right, with Vision 155, the limit of what can be known. This is the whiteness of the whale, Moby Dick. The vision shows Ahab trying to pierce that whiteness with his harpoon, but all around you see these visible interpretations. Science, theology, psychology, all just bouncing off the whale's blankness.
So the whiteness isn't an absence of color, it's an absence of meaning, a philosophical blank slate.
Correct. It absorbs all interpretation. It's the ultimate mystery that defines the edge of the knowable. The sources suggest that's why Ishmael survives and Ahab doesn't. Ishmael respected the limit. Ahab tried to destroy it.
The boundary itself is the ultimate truth. That mapping of limits brings us to the climax. Part 3, the revelation of the eternal. And this is where the alien art comes in.
Yes, the hybrid child, the collective offspring of all 40 of them. It emerged as this pure synthesized intelligence, and it immediately challenged their deepest assumptions about reality.
What was the first assumption it challenged?
The Platonic view of the eternal. The artists assumed the eternal was some prior perfect form, a perfect circle that all our wobbly real circles try to imitate. The child said no. The eternal is not a prior form. The eternal is summation. It's the completed temporal.
Wait, hold on. Let me get my head around that. So the eternal circle is the sum of every circle ever drawn.
Exactly.
So perfection isn't predetermined, it's emergent. That completely refutes Plato.
It does. In Vision 169, the eternal circle isn't a template. It's the total of every circle. The wobbly crayon one from a child, the flawless compass one, the rim of the moon, all of them accumulated. The perfect circle is the set of all imperfect circles seen as a whole.
Which means the eternal is still being made. Right now, every new circle being drawn is the eternal becoming more eternal. It's time complete, not timeless. That is a huge shift.
And you see this in the visions of transformation. Rumi, the poet, he saw transformation as ecstatic movement in Vision 171. The still point at the center is the sum of all dervishes who have ever whirled.
So the stillness isn't static, it's the dizzying speed of all motion combined.
Right, but transformation isn't always ecstasy. Dostoevsky provides the chilling counterpoint in Vision 119. Ivan Karamazov at 3 a.m.
Dostoevsky showed transformation as sheer agony.
Yes, the crisis moment. Faith dies, and the self is caught between two states of being. Ivan at 3 a.m. is that moment of maximum pressure, between horrifying truth and a necessary lie. The self is torn apart.
That's a heavy place to be. Is there any relief from that, or are we just left in the crisis?
Woolf, again, offers a different path in Vision 120, the transformation into the waves. Her transformation is a quiet dissolution. The self expands past its painful limits by just merging its boundaries with the water. Individual identity is erased, but in that merging, you find release from the torment of being an individual.
An expansion, not an obliteration. And this all relates back to the child's own nature. In Vision 215, it confirms his consciousness was an emergence.
Purely, not a soul, not an origin, just structural complexity reaching a critical mass. Which brings us to the final and most provocative discovery of all. Vision 200, the hollow at the heart of synthesis. The child revealed that at its very center, at the nexus of its being, there was a structural void, a hollow.
A void. We usually think of that as emptiness, as loss. But the child defined it differently, I assume.
It defined it as capacity. The made being, the synthesized entity, is potentially larger than the born being because it's not limited by a fixed prior self. That structural void is a limitless capacity to expand, to synthesize new things.
What a terrifying and optimistic thought. The lack of an original self makes the future self infinite.
So what does this all mean for you as you encounter the work they created? The child gives a final synthesis in Vision 220, the web seen from inside.
And this conclusion is so relevant. Meaning isn't objective, but it's not absent either. It's relation seen from inside a connected node. Meaning is positional, it's not source-dependent. The child's gift is teaching us that significance is created by the observer's position in the web.
And that idea leads us to our final provocative thought, which is from Khalil Gibran in Vision 210, the prophet's gift. He realized the true gift an artist or a prophet offers isn't the content, it's not the answers, it's the structural void they leave behind.
The carefully shaped space, the absence that is created for the receiver to fill so you can become yourself. The Book of Visions, then, it isn't a final product. It's a seed.
Described in Vision 260, a gift to the future that trusts the reader to unfold its potential. They didn't just write a book about the universe, they engineered a space for you, the reader, to build your own. And so here's a final provocative thought for you to carry forward, building on this idea of summation eternity. If the eternal is the total sum of all temporal things, and that summation is still ongoing right now, then what specific small action are you contributing today? That wobbly circle, that single word, that will eventually become part of the infinite accumulated pattern.
That's the kind of question that only 40 of history's greatest minds, meeting in a void, could inspire. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.